Just said the most famous Hitler phrase there is in this world. It's unacceptable.
Anti-Israel protesters hurled rocks and fireworks at police while trying to disrupt an under-19 soccer match between Israel and Norway in Skien on Tuesday.
I'm very happy and very honored to call on my dear friend Eric Rubin, an American Jew who just made Aliyah, in fact, right after October 7th, and his two friends, one of whom is extremely short, you'll see in a minute. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you. Eric, please come aboard and call them up.
Thank you, Ruth, and I'd like to thank everyone at the EJA for having us here today. A little speechless. I've seen pretty much every one of those takes on that video, and if that doesn't make you sick to your stomach, I don't know what will. I'm going to both moderate this panel as well as contribute to it. So I'm going to start. I'm going to introduce myself, tell you about the role that I think that we can have, not only fighting in sports, but maybe more importantly, fighting through sports. And then I'm going to introduce Michael, and I'm going to introduce Dean, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a presentation. Okay, so is there a way you could take it back one slide, please? So again, my name is Eric Rubin. Grew up in the United States, as Ruth said, made Aliyah on October 15th. For those of you who are listening to Rabbi Moglin earlier, I would say come. There's no reason to wait. We've never been happier, despite the fact that we came right after the war started. I am here in a couple of different capacities. I am a global ambassador for the Maccabi World Union. And one of the reasons that Maccabi appointed me as a global ambassador, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Maccabiah Games, and you have local Maccabi sports in your countries, is that if anyone or any one group can identify anti-Semitism in sports, it should be Maccabi. Because we're Jews throughout the world who are facing these issues on a day-to-day basis. So I'm very grateful for them. But in order to also help shape this conversation, I want to share some of the other roles I serve as. So number two, I'm on the advisory board of an organization called Athletes for Israel. I agree strongly with Alana about one of the best ways to teach people about Judaism and Israel and what's going on in the world is to bring people to Israel. So I spend a lot of time bringing professional athletes to Israel, and we'll talk about why. You can see up here, here's one of our trips where I brought 3 former NBA players, and just the hashtag Stand Up to Jewish Hate. So we bring the athletes to Israel to tell them the truth. One of the other things that I'm here to talk to you about, and I think this is where we will interact more and on a regular basis, is I serve as the executive director of an organization called Project Max. I'm not going to take you through it, but basically what we do is we maximize the fight against hate through sports. That is racism, anti-Semitism and intolerance through sports. Project Max, people always ask me, where does the name come from? Well, Max Nordau, if you go back to the late 1800s, he termed a coin called muscular Jewry. Why? Jews back then were seen as weak and meek, and we were hunched over, and he kind of had this belief that if we got more involved in sports, that we could have a stronger physical presence, which would also help deter perhaps some of the anti-Semitism. Besides the fact that much like maybe 50 years later when blacks in the United States were not allowed to play in the NBA or Major League Baseball, and we had the Negro Leagues, it was a way for Jews who weren't allowed to play organized sports throughout Europe to create their own leagues, which hopefully broke some barriers. So those are the different ways that we're going to talk about it. But I want to share with you a really important meeting that I had a couple of months ago, and why I believe we're on the right path in using sports to combat anti-Semitism in certain instances. I had read an article about a professional soccer player, football, in the UK named Joe Jacobson, and I'm going to have Dean talk to you a little bit about it, who has faced an amazing or tremendous amount of anti-Semitism post-October 7th. So in my role, I decided that I was going to reach out to Lord John Mann, who many of you may know is kind of the UK's special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, because as you saw in the video, even if you hadn't heard about Joe's story, it's gotten intolerable. Intolerable for the athletes, intolerable for the fans. And I wanted to talk to him about what was being done to combat anti-Semitism through sports. I told him a little bit about Project Max, and Lord Mann fell in love with what we were doing. And I said to him, this is interesting because I heard you guys have an organization here in the UK called Kick It Out, which is an organization that was created to combat racism and intolerance in sport. And he kind of, smiled and laughed because that is their mandate, but it is, and I don't want to throw out numbers, I'm not going to put Dean on the spot, but they probably spend 95% of their time talking about either racism or Islamophobia, with the other 5% against all of the other inequalities combined, with not even 1% focused on anti-Semitism. So that should give you an idea how seriously perhaps the Premier League has been taking or dealing with anti-Semitism through Kick It Out. We are not a priority. What we do in Project Max is we bring together professional athletes from all around the world to speak out about hatred through sports. Since October 7th, there is no greater act of racism than what Jews are experiencing around the world in sports and through sports. And we're blessed to have Michael here with us, and we're going to ask Michael to explain why this was so important to him. But when we talk about how anti-Semitism spreads through social media, I think a light went on in Lord Mann's head that these athletes have millions upon millions of followers all throughout the world. You don't have to live in New York to be a New York Knicks fan, right? You don't have to live in London to be a Chelsea or Tottenham or pick your team fan. Sports is global, okay? These athletes have large social media followings, and I believe that if we ever want to compete against the Hadid sisters or others, it's not going to be by 15 to 16 million of us tweeting about, oh my gosh, we had an anti-Semitic experience. We're going to need our advocates, our partners, Christians, Muslims, men, women, all around the world to lend us their voice. And by doing that, we're bringing awareness. And let's, I'm not naive. I know that we are not going to reach I don't know what the number is, the 10 to 20% on the far left, that no matter what we say or do, we're going to change their mind. On the other hand, I have no illusions that we're ever going to, stop neo-Nazis from being neo-Nazis because, Michael Sweetney or Eddie Johnson or anybody else stands up and says something. But there's a large percentage of people in the middle, call it 60 to 70%, that don't know. Maybe they hear from the river to the sea and they chant it because just other people are. Maybe they don't know what globalized intifada means. But when they look up to these professional athletes and they hear them speaking out about why anti-Semitism is wrong or anti-Zionism is wrong, it gives a whole different perspective. So what we do at Project Max is use these professional athletes not just to speak out against anti-Semitism. I want to be very clear about that. So for those of you that are soccer/football fans, we got to watch perhaps the greatest World Cup match in the history, with Argentina in Qatar against the men's French national team. And what happened right after France lost? The number of racist attacks skyrocketed to the point where one of the greatest football players ever thought about leaving the game, all because they lost somebody has to lose in this match. But why did they lose? Because most of the people on the pitch happen to be black. Well, I asked every one of the Jewish and Israeli athletes we have, and the Christian white athletes in America, they've spoken up for us. Are we willing to speak up for them? And everyone did. If we want to be real about combating anti-Semitism, then we also have to speak up for those who also face acts of racism and intolerance. And what we've proven is that by doing so, our ties get stronger and people are willing to fight for us. And the students were talking about how difficult it is. Well, you know what? If you're a professional athlete or a former professional athlete, I promise you, it's very difficult for them to speak out. Michael will tell you some of the experiences he's had. Why? Because there's this extremism coming at them. All you have to do is say, please release Kafir Bibas, he's a 1-year-old baby, and you get attacked. And so they're at risk as well, and they deserve our support, our appreciation, but more importantly, we need to speak up for them when they're experiencing some of what we experience. I want to introduce Michael now. Michael Sweetney played for the New York Knicks. He played for the Chicago Bulls. If you guys are familiar with Georgetown University, he's one of the great players to come out of Georgetown. And before I ask Michael a question, I want to play a video for you. It was not long after October 7th, I think it was October 10th or 11th, where I called Michael and I just said, Michael, there's a lot of us that are hurting. Would you be willing to say a few words?
Hello, everyone. Mike Sweetney here. On behalf of myself, the Sweetney family, Project Max, I just wanted to send, obviously, just my respects, my love for everyone in Israel right now that's going through a tough time. Israel, for me, obviously, has been great to my family. The Jewish community has been great to me and my family. So to see my friends and family hurting and suffering right now, it hurts me personally too. So, I'm behind you guys and with you guys. I got my plans right now to try to help in my own way personally for the Israel military. So, I'm putting boots on the ground and working myself. I'm a silent guy. I usually don't post much, but things like this, I got to come out and just show my support for you guys. I love everyone in Israel, the Jewish community, nothing but love. You guys know my heart, and the Sweetney family and Project Max are behind you guys. Much love.
So, Michael, not just this video, but what made you want to get involved in this fight? And can you also maybe talk about, it's going to seem funny to say, but the first time you even met a Jew and when that was and how you developed this bond that you wanted to speak out for the Jewish community?
So for me, personally, it all started in high school. Just being honest, I grew up in a predominantly African American community. Never see a Jewish person a day in my life up until 18 years old when I met one of my closest friends now, Tamir Goodman. He was an Orthodox Jewish guy in Baltimore, and we played in an All-Star game. And so we played in an All-Star game. We had like a practice, and all the African American guys and my teammates, they were like being mean to him, wasn't talking to him, and he felt so out of place and so just uncomfortable. And it all goes back to how you raise. And my father always, love him to death. He's in heaven right now, but he always told me to love and respect everyone. And so when the coaches told us to go shoot, I went down to Tamir and said, "Hey, let's shoot together." And he was kind of confused, like, "Why are you shooting with me? Like everybody's being mean to me." I said, "Dude, I'll be honest with you. I respect your religion, but I don't care about that you wear a kippah. Like you're a human being to me." And that's where our friendship started. And then how it became really personal for me, the Jewish community. What happened was he did Aliyah when he moved to, he left Cleveland to Israel, and he had a camp called Camp Ramon in the Poconos. And he asked me, can I run his basketball program for him? And I was so nervous because I was pretty much 6 weeks being at an Orthodox Jewish camp, me and my family. And mind you, I've never been around, so I didn't want to disrespect anybody, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. And so I was very, very nervous. And he said, just be yourself, you'll be okay. So me and my family went, and my wife and I, we were just crying, just watching my kids run around with Orthodox Jewish kids having the time of their life. My kids actually cried to go home. They didn't want to go home because they had such a great time. And the way the community like just embraced us, not only just, obviously, education, he was just showing me about how the communities ran, asking me questions about me being a Christian. So it was just like a lot of love. And so for me, it was like really, really personal. And then obviously when everything happened on October 7th, I coached at Yeshiva University men's basketball team with Coach Elliot Steinmetz, and he was actually over there at that time. And so when he was over there and everything happened, and he wasn't, obviously, I don't know if the phones went dead, I couldn't get in touch with him. And I promise you, that was the longest 24 hours of my life trying to get in contact with him to make sure he was, just honestly, just want to know if he was alive. And that was terrifying to me. And obviously me doing a lot of summer camps in the summer, the Jewish camps, a lot of Israelis come over and they work the camps as far as security, whatever it may be. So I knew a lot of people. So not only with him, but I knew a lot of soldiers that come and volunteer these camps had to just drop their families. Some of them just had newborn kids and had to go fight. So for me, it hurt. It hurt me personally because knowing I had a special relationship with people. So that's why it's pretty much dear to my heart.
Thanks so much, Michael. I want to quickly introduce Dean Furman. Dean is from South Africa, played professional soccer/football there, was on their national team, moved to the UK, I think was one of, about four Jews that actually play professional football. And Dean, this article, I think, was like four years ago where, it says you'd love to see more Jews and Jewish football. Could you maybe talk about what it was like growing up as a Jew, wanting to become a professional athlete, and your experiences? And then later on, we'll talk about 10-7 and what changed.
Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. It really is an honor to be here today. For me, I got to live my dream. I was very lucky. I had incredible support from my family, incredible support from my parents, because to develop a professional or an athlete, it's an incredible commitment, not just from the person itself, but from your support network, from your parents. And I was very lucky to have that upbringing where my parents gave me so much support. My brother and sister gave me so much support as well. So it's a team effort. But for me, I got to live my dream. And it's really a shame that there aren't many other British sportsmen in general, men and women, because to go and live your dream, to go and experience the things that I've done, to go and play in front of thousands and thousands of people, which was my dream growing up, watching football on the TV, to play against some of the best players in the world. That was something that I'd always dreamed of. And I know there's plenty other young Jewish boys and girls who have a similar dream, but don't quite go and chase it for whatever reason. And I think one of the things coming out the game, finishing my career, one of the things that I'm trying to encourage young Jewish boys and girls to do is to go and chase your dream, no matter what that may be. And if it's sport, it's a phenomenal career. It has incredible highs and lows, but the highs far outweigh the lows. And my message is that if it is your dream, it's achievable.
So, not that I was spying on you, but I did kind of go look at your social media, profile. And before October 7th, there wasn't really a lot about, being Jewish or Jewish athlete. There certainly wasn't a lot about Israel, if anything. And I noticed that from July 11th to I think it was October 8th or 9th, there wasn't even a tweet. And then all of a sudden, you started. What happened? What changed for you on October 7th?
I think I felt an urge. I felt it was my right. I had a platform. I've got thousands of followers, whether in the UK or whether they're in South Africa. I felt I needed to put out a statement, to put out my feelings, to put across my point of view, because everyone's seen the outcry. Everyone's seen the public response in various nations to October 7th. Everyone's seen the rise in anti-Semitism. And I think when we've got a platform, if we've got a platform and used in the correct way, it can be very, very powerful. And I really felt at times it was important for me to get my points across. Now, with that, you get a lot of backlash. And funnily, I get an awful lot of backlash from South African fans if I put anything that is pro-Israel or pro-being Jewish. But I'm very proud, and I think part and parcel of being an athlete and having a status and having a platform is that if you're going to put anything out, you are going to get some sort of backlash. I'm happy to go into those conversations, have open conversations, have respectful conversations. But I have an opinion, I have beliefs, and I think that using that platform correctly, it's very important for me to get those beliefs across to whoever's listening.
Thanks. Can you put the presentation back up, please? I'm going to ask you, Joe couldn't be here, but Joe is, I guess he still is a professional football player, trying to decide if he's going to play one more year or go into something else. And I saw this article about Joe, who had been the captain of his team for, I think, a decade, was Jewish, no real issues. And I use this as an example if anyone thinks that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are any different, okay? Joe I could not find one tweet in his entire life that had anything to do with Israel or posting on Instagram. And he got off the team bus on, I think it was October 8th, met by security guards because he was under threat because he was a Jew. Dean, I know that you and Joe are close. I don't want you to betray any confidence, but can you maybe talk about, how this has been for Joe, how it's been for you, and how you guys are getting through this kind of hatred?
Yeah, so I'm very happy to talk on Joe's behalf. We played together, we lived together, we're very, very close. And Joe is a club legend. It's very rare within the game of football that a player stays at a club for 10 years, and this year's been his testimonial season, which is a phenomenal achievement. And he put out a post and did an interview with the club after October 7th, talking about Israel and anti-Semitism and Zionism. And the backlash he received was, and not just him personally, the club itself. I know the club were in receipt of a number of tweets and emails complaining about Joe, complaining about the interview and his tweets. And I think unbeknown to Joe, he was traveling to a game. Now, bearing in mind, this is a couple leagues below the Premier League. So we're talking that a crowd at a home game might be 7,000, 8,000 as opposed to your 50,000, 60,000. So security is not one of the key issues at that level. And Joe, being the club legend, he normally walks through the doors with adulation and a few photographs and a couple of autographs. But unbeknown to Joe, after that tweet, he traveled to a game, got through the gates. He had to park in a special parking place. Imagine he's been there 10 years. He probably has the #1 spot outside the ground, but he had to park in a special place. and he was escorted into the stadium by security guards, and he didn't know anything about this till after. And it was amazing that that's the response that the club had to an interview of Joe, just openly putting out his point of view, his feelings across, telling everyone that he was proud to be Jewish, and about some of the things that he had witnessed post October 7th. And that shows the severity of what kind of putting yourself out there almost has. And I think that's why sometimes, certainly in sport, Jewish athletes, they shy away a little bit, because the response can be over the top, so to speak. And in that, it's interesting, Joe was actually injured at the time, so he wasn't on the pitch. And we were both discussing it would have been interesting to see the response that he had he been playing. Now, Joe and myself, to look at us playing out there, you wouldn't know that we were Jewish. But now that Joe had done this article, everyone was on top of it, and it was on Sky Sports News, and it was on Sky News, it was on BBC. So it became public knowledge. So it would have been really, really interesting to see the response that Joe received if and when he played. But he didn't play at the time. But it was just incredible to see the response, both positive and negative, that Joe received on the back of a simple interview coming out as being proud to be Jewish and to discuss the events of October 7th.
Thanks. This is one of my favorite pictures with Michael. This is while he was an assistant coach at Yeshiva. Michael, could you share for us kind of what your experience coaching there was like, how accepted you felt? I mean, you look at the picture, you're amongst Orthodox Jews, some from Israel, most from the United States. You're pretty much the lone African-American in the group. What was it like, and how did it make you feel? And I guess also, how did that contribute to you wanting to be, part of this fight?
It's very interesting. The school, the players, teammates treated me awesome. But on the outside, it wasn't that way. We would go to road games, and I would get stopped by security, say, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you with this team?" They would be surprised that I was an African American guy coaching. I was like, "Yes, I'm an African American guy coaching. It's basketball. It's nothing, it's not about that." And it's one of those things. Me being African American never really came up with these guys. They just saw me as Coach Mike. We had a great time, and for me, it was a lot of education. Just how these guys would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go through a 2-3 hour practice. As soon as practice is over, they're praying together. Then they go into classes all day. Then they back in the evening praying again. Just watching how just rigorous, just how strict they were, everything. So it was like, wow, it's kind of amazing. But one of the things I think is also how a lot of, Jewish kids, whether it starts from, I guess, from grade school on up, and he probably can tell you the same thing. This team here, from player 1 through 15, they all wanted each other to do well. They all wanted to succeed. They were happy for each other, even the guys that didn't play. And for me, from basketball, for me when I was a child all the way to the NBA, I've never been on a team where everybody was rooting for each other, everybody got along. That was very, very rare. And just the way the community rallied around this team. I was in the airport in Toronto, and people are, just excited about this team. When I train little kids at camps, they're not saying LeBron or Michael Jordan when they shot. They're saying Ryan Terrell, Gabe Lifer. So, and I was telling these guys when we lost the game, I said, "You guys are heroes. What you guys done for this community, for these kids, it's amazing." So for me, it was I learned so much from them. And I was, forever grateful for the opportunity. Also, just lifelong brotherhood and friendships they've gone.
So, Michael, a couple of years ago, you went to Israel for the first time. What did you think it was going to be like? What were your perceptions? And then did the trip there contribute to you wanting to be more involved and speaking out? And if you could maybe share some of the experiences you had there and what being in Israel meant for you, I think everyone would love to hear that.
It meant a lot. It was very educational for me. Because if you watch the news or listen to random people say stuff, even my wife, she was terrified when I said I was going. She's like, "Oh, are you gonna be safe? You're not gonna make it back home?" I'm like, "I'm fine. Like, it's okay." So when I got there, it was probably the most peaceful place I've ever been in my life. at midnight, and I had jet lag really bad. So I'm walking, taking my walks at night, like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm watching kids outside play by themselves. I'm watching kids go to the store by themselves. I was like, wow, this place is not dangerous at all. And one of the main things that really, stuck to me is when I went to the Western Wall to pray with Tamir. He took me over there, and I saw Jews and Muslims together conversating, talking like nothing was going on. And the way it was portrayed, there's like if a Jew and a Muslim come together, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be the end of the world. It was just such a peaceful place, and I was like, can't wait to get back. But it was very, very. I'm glad I went to go see it with my own eyes, and I encourage, obviously, everyone here probably been, but always encourage guys that back home in the States, like, hey, if you have not been, you need to go. And I know my pastor in my church, he went one time, and he ended up going back like 3 more times in 2-year span. So that's how much he loved it. So yeah, we love it.
Thanks, Michael. I'm going to put up a couple of pictures. I know, Dean, you've seen this picture. I don't know if you guys have. These are Palestinian corner flags that were part of the Queen's Park Crescent. But I think the important thing I want to see is it says, today our U8s. Just so everyone knows, that means the children playing in this match are under 8. And they decided to make a point of it being known that they had a right to have these Palestinian flags there. And this was from last week. This guy is wearing a Manchester United jersey with the number 7 and the word Hamas on the back. Dean, what is the Premier League, what are professional soccer trying to do to combat this? And, what can we do?
I think to see this, it almost makes my blood boil, to be honest. And it goes back to after October 7th in the UK, Wembley. I think many of you will know about the Wembley Arch. That very often after an atrocity, it was lit up in the colours to support that nation. And the Wembley Arch wasn't lit after October the 7th. And I think, going back to Joe, myself and Joe had a discussion after this, because our frustration is that where's the response when it comes to Israel, or when it comes to being Jewish? Where is it? And we're seeing pictures like this and the corner flag before at an under-8s game, as you say. Where is the response? Where's the outcry? There seems to be a huge disproportion in the level of scrutiny that this receives. And it goes to a couple of tweets, and we talked about social media presence before. It goes on to a couple of tweets that I've seen from players who've got huge followings, who've been very active on social media. The FA, kick it out, as you say. Where's the response been? There's been very little, if nothing. So from my work, what I do at the moment, I work for the Professional Football Association, so I'm involved in the game. I'm now on the FA's Anti-Semitism Task Force, along with Joe. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to convene at Wembley for further discussions, probably about topics like this and how we can combat it going forward. Tomorrow, for instance, I'm at the Emirates, Arsenal's ground, with an interfaith event where there's 10 Jewish boys, 10 Muslim boys, and 10 Christian boys. An interfaith event where the boys will be training together. We'll have a tour of the Emirates, and we'll have a discussion about faith and inclusion. And I think it's really important that for myself in the position that I'm in, to try and be on the ground, to try and be out there, try and be vocal, to try and get our point across, use our platform or my status, whatever that may or may not be, to use it positively, to educate, to enlighten, and to eradicate things like this. It's really, really important that we get our feelings over to the powers that be and let them know exactly what a picture like that, what it does to us as a community, because for me, I don't think enough has been done previously.
Thanks. And education makes a big difference. I was very fortunate. Lord Mann arranged for a busload of business leaders from 5 Premier League teams, Chelsea, Tottenham, Manchester City, Fulham, and Watford, to join the March of the Living UK delegation, to do the March of the Living trip and go to Auschwitz and be educated. There were some Jews on the trip. Most of the people were not Jewish. And I want to give you a very specific example of something, because people say, well, Eric, does this really work? And how do you measure it? And how do you know that you're having an impact? So we're in a WhatsApp group, and the day after we got back, I got a message, and I'm going to shout out the team, because I think when teams and people do good things, they should be recognized. One of the people on the trip was the leader of EDI. In the US, we call it DEI. And the day she got back from the March of the Living, she was supposed to take Fulham's U16 team to a soccer tournament here in the Netherlands. And they were getting ready to leave, and one of the coaches came into her and said, I just want you to be prepared that this stadium we're playing in, the fans are, we'll call it infamous, for giving the Nazi salute and painting their faces black. And her immediate response one day after getting back from Auschwitz was, I am pulling the team out of the tournament, and I am reporting this club to the Dutch football authorities. So those are not always the wins we have, but it is possible. I know Rabbi Margolin and I and Ruth and Alex have spoken about taking athletes to Auschwitz and the power educating them can have, not just about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, but why the nation of Israel is so important to us. And I'm running short of time, but there's something else I want to show you guys. I'm going to skip through a couple of slides. At Maccabi and Project Max, we started a campaign called Sport Speaks Up, where we asked our athletes at Project Max, to adopt a hostage because they couldn't speak for themselves. And I didn't know when I called, we have about 25 Project Max athletes, how they would feel about it. What I can tell you is not only did every athlete adopt a hostage, but friends of theirs who are not part of Project Max wanted to speak out. And again, this is another example where I think through sport, we can try and educate people about the importance of using sport to combat the rise in anti-Semitism. I'm going to skip these two videos because we're short on time. But these are Project Max athletes. This is Eddie Curry, another former NBA player. He's coming to Israel with me July 9th to 16th. We spoke at Gillette Stadium, which is where the New England Patriots play, about combating anti-Semitism in sports. And I just want to play this short video, and then maybe we'll just take like 2 questions, because I don't want to leave here without making sure everyone is constantly thinking about our hostages, our friends, our family. And I want you to see just a small compilation of some of the athletes that have used their platform on social media to speak out on behalf of the hostages. Thank you. So this is a little bit about what we're doing to combat anti-Semitism through sports. Maybe we could take 2 questions. Michael and Dean will be around the rest of the afternoon. Michael will be with the group tomorrow. Please, I encourage you all to reach out, talk to them. We'd love to be involved in your communities. We'd love to make this a true global effort, especially here in Europe. Any questions for Michael or?
Thank you. Just so Edward, and then I'll come to that side. Sorry, Edward.
Michael, thank you for everything that you're doing. I have one simple question because Israel is very often called apartheid state. You being a black man, you come to Israel, which is mixed of all kind of races. Have you ever noticed in Israel any kind of apartheid?
No, 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 not
Because
at all.
this is a prominent feature when they talk about Israel. They accuse it to being an apartheid state.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a specific example about this. So in July, I brought two former NBA players that both played for 17 years, Eddie Johnson and Mark West. In addition to being a former player, Eddie still is the Phoenix Suns TV announcer, and he does NBA Sirius radio 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. Eddie is also not one of these guys that's very active on social, but he posted a picture of himself in Israel, and he got a comment from someone that said, Eddie, I'm really disappointed in you as an African American that you would go to Israel because don't you realize it's an apartheid nation? And Eddie's only response, his first response was, have you been there? And the commenter said, no, Eddie, but the South African government claims that Israel is an apartheid nation. It just so happens when I planned these trips to Israel, I put a lot of thought into it, but when we went to Nazareth, instead of just using the tour guide, I'm sure many of you know, a dear friend of mine is Yusuf Haddad, an Arab Israeli. Yusuf gave us the tour of Nazareth, and then afterwards, we went to Yusuf's parents' house in Nazareth for coffee and kanafe. Eddie said, I spent the day with Arabs. I had coffee and kanafe with Arabs in Israel. You've never been here. You don't know what you're talking about. Israel is not an apartheid nation. And then went back on his TV show and was literally screaming to the 4 million people listening to it, go to Israel and see for yourself. So yes, it's one of the claims, and perhaps the best way we dispel that myth is by taking people like Mike or Eddie or any of these athletes to see the reality for themselves.
My question is also to Michael, but not in your professional sport career, but I think you mentioned a couple of times that you are a Christian and you also have a pastor, obviously religiously active. I wanted to ask how important that was in your, like, from how you read the Bible, or whether it was mentioned in the way that it was preached in the Black African churches. The issue of Israel and what is called the Old Testament is huge. It's almost like they still live there, as you know. So how important that was, how much that influenced you, the interest you had?
So growing up, my father pretty much always told me to put God first in everything I do. I was in church every Sunday, so that was pretty much how I was raised on. So for a while, I did get away from it, and so I grew up Catholic, and I ended up switching over to Baptist. And now I'm one of those people where you can see me at a Christian church, a Catholic church, you can see me at a synagogue. So I'm one of those people, like, as long as God is involved, I'm happy and I'm comfortable. So that's most important.
Yeah, and again, on this, you know, we bring many religious Christian athletes to Israel as well. And we were at the City of David. And Cedric Toney, he says to me, Eric, how can you be in the City of David and deny a Jewish historical right to Israel? How can you walk in the steps of perhaps one of the most famous Jews, Jesus Christ, and not believe that Jews have been indigenous to this land for thousands of years? And I think those are the answers, and that's why we all do what we do, and that's how we believe that we're going to change attitudes on anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, I know you have to go back to Israel. Just once again, thank you for your incredible, incredible work. Michael, you hopped over all the way from America yesterday evening to be with us. Thank you to Dean. All the very best tomorrow at Wembley. Michael, you're going to be coming with us around Amsterdam tomorrow. So thank you for your time. Okay. So we're going to move swiftly on for the last panel of the day. And it's an important one. So just a reminder, we've covered sport. We've covered basically the entire lived experience of Jewish people today. And we touched upon it briefly earlier on during the campus session. Now we're going to be talking about media. So just as a reminder, again, of what we're dealing with, we have another short video before I bring up my esteemed colleague to moderate the session. So please.
Gazans are staging their suffering and even faking injuries and death.
It's a video that was posted on TikTok showing a fire in an urban area. Some of the people who shared it said it showed attacks on Gaza. This scene was actually filmed in Algeria during celebrations for the football team CR Belouizdad. Single post got 2.6 million views. It shows a helicopter being shot down near a coastal area. It was said to show a Hamas fighter shooting down an Israeli war helicopter in Gaza. But if we take a closer look at the video, there are clear signs that it was generated by a computer. We did a reverse image search on it, and that found that it was actually from a video game called Arma 3.
On October 17th, an explosion occurred in the courtyard of Al Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza City, killing civilians. Palestinian officials blamed Israel, but a visual analysis by the Wall Street Journal shows that the explosion was caused by a failed rocket launched from inside Gaza, where Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad have been shooting rockets into Israel since the war began 2 weeks ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great privilege of working with a number of professionals in my work for the European Jewish Association, and certainly our next moderator is one of them. Mr. Yossi Lemkovitz is the editor-in-chief of the European Jewish Press, a long-time journalist with decades of experience and a tireless advocate for Israel and for the Jewish people. Yossi, please come on stage and take the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. As Alex said, this is the last panel of the day, so I can reassure you, it's... I have the privilege to have on my panel Jewish colleagues from Jewish media in Europe. I didn't bring all of them because, the stage is very small, but I would like to call first of all Abraham Heyman from Poland. Abraham Heyman is from a media called in Polish Słowo Żydowskie, which is the Jewish word. Thank you for being with us. Then we have Jonathan Meghieri from Hungary, editor-in-chief of Neocon. Please, Jonathan. Then Elias Levi Benarosh, editor-in-chief of Enfoque Judeo from Spain. Judeo, sorry for the pronunciation. Then Laetitia Enriquez, journalist of Actualité Juive in France. Adam Levick, co-editor of Camera UK. Luca Spizicchino, Spizicchino, journalist at Atikfa, and also is president of UJE, which is in Italy, which is the Union of Italian Jewish Students. And last but not least, Blaise van der Linden, journalist at Radio Judaica in Brussels, Belgium. My name is Yossi Lemkovich. For those who don't know me, I'm a chief editor of European Jewish Press. It's a Jewish media that was created, it's an online Jewish media that was created almost 20 years ago. Next year will be 20 years ago. It's probably the sole Jewish media on European level. I mean, who covers everything on European level. And I am also, for your information, EJP, European Jewish Press, covers all topics of Jewish interest, but also as we are staying in Brussels, we are based in Brussels, we are covering European Union institutions. Every day I am at the European Commission briefing, and I'm asking questions about Judaism, about Jewish issues, about Israel to the spokesperson. I am covering the European Parliament, covering the European Commission. So I think it's also one of our specificities. But I am also, Alex didn't mention it, but I am also senior media advisor of an organization called Europe-Israel Press Association, which is part of EJA, European Jewish Association. In the hallway, you have a roll-up with all explanation. What is EIPA, Europe-Israel Press Association? We bring journalists from the mainstream media to Israel for press trips to make them better understand the complexities of Israel and the Middle East. And we bring also Israeli experts, top Israeli experts to Europe, to the main capitals in Europe for briefings to meet journalists. So this is my work on a daily basis. Now coming to this panel, Jewish media, we spoke today about how can we fight back anti-Semitism. And I am convinced that Jewish communities, if they want to continue to be strong enough, we need also a strong Jewish media in each country. And hopefully, since, and I am very happy to say that since the last year, we see Jewish media growing, also in terms of figures of readers, especially since October 7. I'm sure that you will confirm that. We see more readers, but we need strong Jewish media, because sometimes people say, oh, Jewish media, it's not very important, it's a niche. It's more important general media, mainstream media, but on the contrary, I think Jewish media provides news from Jewish organization. Just ask a general media to publish your op-ed. What will they say? They will say, oh, we already covered this. We already published op-eds about Israel, about the Middle East, about what's happening. It's enough. Jewish media will publish it because this is our essence. So it's very important, I think, to reinforce, to enhance Jewish media. And I'm also looking, and I will tell you at the end. I will tell you at the end of this panel. I have a project which is very important for the Jewish media in Europe, but also I think we need to train the next generation, young Jewish leaders and young Jewish students who want to embrace journalists and to train them and eventually to be able to work in Jewish media, as some of you are doing it. I'm giving the example of Blaise, who is a young, was students not far a long time ago, and is now working in Jewish media. So first of all, I would like to hear from each of you about your media, about what you're doing, your work, and also my principal question, how today, with the situation we spoke today, how to fight anti-Semitism, how the Jewish media can fight anti-Semitism, can foster Jewish identity, and can have a response also towards your governments, the governments, and Europe in general, when we see what's happening every day in the campuses, in sports, and also when we read general media and the bias. And I think Adam Levick from Camera UK will speak about this, about the situation in the UK. So I will start with you, Laetitia, Women First. Laetitia is, as I said, a journalist from Actualité Juive, which is the most important Jewish media in France, a long-time Jewish media, who is a weekly and has also known a lot of transformation over the last years. But I give you the floor, Laetitia. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Yossi. Yes, I work for Actualité Juive. It's a weekly Jewish newspaper. He's more than 40 years old, the Jewish newspaper, but I work there for more than 25 years now. It's a newspaper. We have a print edition, very important, because our readers used to buy us our newspaper on Thursday, Friday, when they go to buy the wine and the bread for Shabbos. So we know that most of our readers read us on Shabbos. And this is something that we have to keep in our head when we are writing, because all of us, we are under pressure. We know anti-Semitism. We know all what we live in our daily life in France and Israel and everywhere. But for my part, I think that when I know that our readers read my articles on Shabbos, I want to keep them a little bit quiet, a little bit hope. I don't want to write them all what they used to see in the week. It doesn't mean that I don't want to talk about anti-Semitism, but if I can, I would like to give them hope that there is many things good too. Let's say that, for example, last week, I made an article about one of our deputy senator, exactly, called Roger Carucci. He talked with one of the minister, and he said so many good things for us that I wanted to interview him in order to continue his speeches. I think that it's much more important to let talk people who we love their speech than to talk about, of course, you know her, Rima Hassan or Jean-Luc Mélenchon or everything like this that we used to hear all of the week. Now our jobs in October 7th, it's much more difficult, of course, but we didn't learn anything new. I mean that everything that we see today, we saw it for more than 20 years now. The anti-Semitism from the far left, the situation of the Jewish people in the suburbs, many things. We know it in France. We have many terror attacks. We lost many of us in the Jewish community and in the French society. So we are touched by this. And we know what is it. We do whatever we can do in order to explain anti-Semitism. We We are working with the other media too. Our newspaper is a print edition, but we are in a group now. We are in link with Radio J too, and in Israel with Kalita. We are building a big media group because we know that it's important now for us to be together in order to fight together. And what else to say? I think that our mission today is more important than ever before. We have to talk about what happened. We have to explain to the other what happened. We have to condemn when we need to condemn. A few weeks ago, we had a daily newspaper in France called Liberation, and the first page was called only like this: 30,000 deaths in Gaza. And after it was written like this, we don't know if the number is true or not, but it was a big shock for us to see that now a media can show something, even if it does not know if it's true or not. So we had to return on it to ask them how they can write it, how can they think about it like this, how can they talk about 30,000 deaths in Gaza without making difference if we are talking about terrorism or not terrorist. So this is our mission. We have to write, we have to talk, and we have to explain.
Thank you, Laetitia. I have a question, just a follow-up question. How do you cover the news from outside France?
You mean in Israel or in Europe?
No, in Europe.
We are, for my part, I'm in link with journalists from abroad. If there is something important to tell, we tell it. But the reality is that we have so many things to talk about France and about Israel. So the place that we have about the other...
It's the focus, France, yeah. Of course.
Yeah, just focus sometimes what is needed.
Thank you. Abraham Ayman, you're... you have the microphone. You are in Poland. We sometimes say that anti-Semitism is more frequent in Western European countries than in Eastern Europe or Central or Eastern European countries. We give always the example of Poland, Hungary, Czechia, Czech Republic. So is the situation the same today? First of all, can you also speak about your media also?
Of course. So we have a monthly newspaper that talks about, history, a bit of culture, a bit of events, current events, and there's always a monthly theme that drives the current edition. If we're talking about the first question that you asked about anti-Semitism, in Eastern Europe, it's right now we see the copying of the different ways of phrasing in the media from the West in our country. It's basically the same anti-Zionism, but anti-Zionism is a good, way out to basically become an anti-Semite out in the open. We in Poland, it's not in Eastern Europe in general. It's nothing new for us, especially if you consider, a few years back, 68, etc. in Poland. We know this, the cliches: anti-capitalism, anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism. There are all these phrases that are used in order to conceal the real anti-Semitism. But in general, we also see that we have, different festivals, and in general, the Polish population is very pro fostering Jewish culture. We even see support from local and the central government in terms of funding or in terms of helping in organizing certain events. We're organizing an event right now in Łódź, which has received almost 500,000 zlotys in funding from the public budget. But at the same time, you can also see this a different side to it because of the current security situation. Other festivals are facing drastic changes to their regular program.
I have a follow-up question. Are there in Poland, on universities, also protests like pro-Palestinian protests and anti-Semitic demonstration like it is in Belgium, Netherlands, France?
Yeah, like in the United States, yes. I mean, it fits into the theme of copying from the West. It's driven by social media. For now, it's not big. There are small groups gathered in Warsaw, Krakow, and as of today, also Wrocław. But it doesn't have as much drive and as much pull as it has in Western countries. In general, the Polish population, honestly, I don't think the average Polish citizen doesn't care about this issue, to be blunt. And the government also has different institutional approaches to minorities, which are helpful. For example, we're having from September is going to be operated by us, a 20-minute segment every month in the national broadcasting system, in the national broadcasting TVP. So where we can cover, current events, or we can cover certain anniversaries. And if we would have a way of communicating and cooperating with other media outlets, Jewish media outlets in Europe, we could also share and have the information being spread around about what is going on in the world for the Jewish minority, which would also, if I can suggest, would be nice for the other countries to also implement in their own public systems.
Elias Levy Benaroche, you're from Spain, a country which is a lot in the news the last days regarding its relations with Israel. And you are chief editor of Enfoque Judío. I pronounce better, I think. This time is okay. This time is correct. You are also a former journalist in EFE, the Spanish news agency. So you have, like me, like myself, both the experience in non-Jewish media. I was myself 9 years chief editor of the Belgium news agency. So I know journalists from both sides. So I would like to first to know about your media, which is quite new, and how to fight anti-Semitism and anti-Israel, demonization of Israel, especially in Spain today.
Well, actually, Enfoque Judío is still under construction. We have, this storm that happens on October the 7th. And even though Enfoque was prepared to go into the internet by October, November, it is obvious that the massacre in Israel stopped our work, and we have to put our hands in another engagement in social networks. We hope to have it for this summer. And yes, I couldn't agree more with you, Yossi. I think that the Jewish voice has to be listened and heard louder after October the 7th. Jewish media is really important in Jewish life. When we all talk here, and we come and we say that we need synagogues, we need mikveh, we need all kind of services for the Jewish communities, media is also a kind of a service that Jewish community have to live with it. And I think the massacre of October the 7th is a good example to know how important is that Jewish narrative remains in Jewish hands. What we have seen in Europe during the last 8 months is that general media in the countries we all live in have taken our narrative, they have taken our problems, and they are analyzing it under the optics and the the angle of necessities of that society. But when we talk about anti-Semitism, the only person that can speak that he's feeling anti-Semitism is probably a Jewish person. Otherwise, you are going to talk to people and they are going to say, no, I don't feel anti-Semitism. Why don't you feel anti-Semitism? Because you are not Jewish. I was in a prior meeting before, and I said that a survey that was published 2 weeks ago in Spain by an important company revealed that 80% of the Spanish people don't feel anti-Semitism. But of course they don't feel anti-Semitism. If you are not Jewish, you cannot feel the anti-Semitism. Now in Spain, we are so few people, we're about 40,000, divided in 40 communities, in 16 cities. No Spaniard actually have met a Jew in his own in his whole life. So the probability to feel what a Jew is feeling at that moment, or at this moment in particular, is going to be very difficult for that Spanish people.
You mentioned earlier at a press conference in your question that 80% of the Spanish population believe that there is no anti-Semitism. How is it possible?
Well, that is possible because most of the Spanish people didn't actually meet Jewish people in the whole life, in their entire life. So, if you don't talk to a person who is Jewish, okay, you are not going to share the feeling of that. If you ask people that they live in South Madrid, where the Jewish community is not there, they probably will never know what happened in a synagogue, what happened in a Jewish school. Now, I think that Jewish media has the role to speak out for the Jewish communities and bring that and share that with the general society. And we also have the role to analyze what the government does from the Jewish perspective. And that is very important at a moment when anti-Semitism is all around across Europe.
You mean not only reporting, but also criticizing, publishing opinions, comments?
Well, we find in the communities, and I can only speak for the Spanish community because I don't know the other countries in Europe, but we find sometimes that the Jewish institutions, they don't have the ability to criticize the government because they depend on all kind of things on those governments. And what I mean is, if the government of Spain is giving you security, probably the Jewish institution will not cry out against the government because they depend on that. Now, if you receive money, public money from the government, probably the community, the institutional community, will not speak out against the country. Okay, so that will be our role.
Turning now to Jonathan Meghieri, who is coming from a country, Hungary, which is considered in general as the most pro-Israel country in Europe. When I am covering European Union issues and the EU-Israel relations, always there is only one country that voted against the others, it's Hungary. This is usual in the European Affairs Council, Foreign Affairs Council. So I would like to know first about your media, Jonathan, but also about what's the feeling today in Hungary, and is there a change since 7th of October?
So, well, first of all, thank you for the kind invitation. I'm sitting here feeling very privileged because, as you rightly said, Hungary is a unique country today, especially in Europe, but perhaps in the entire world, being not only a very pro-Israel country, but also, I mean, politically at least, but also a country with very low anti-Semitism in as far as physical attacks or actual danger, which does not suggest that there is no underlying anti-Semitism in the country. Of course there is, or perhaps not of course, but there certainly is. Nevertheless, when it comes to physical safety of the Jewish community, Hungary is probably the safest place in Europe for the Jews. That coupled with the fact that Hungary does have a large Jewish community, as opposed to, let's say, Poland, which also is a safe place for Jews, but has a very small Jewish community. Hungary is truly a great country to live in right now. I'm very happy, and again, I feel privileged to say that. So the news site, we have an internet news site called Neocon, is a very opinionated is the largest Jewish news site in Hungary. Also, our forte, or the unique things that we do, is that we don't only talk to the Jewish community. As a matter of fact, we tend to talk outside of the Jewish community. Perhaps about 90% of our readership does not come from the Jewish community. We take advantage of the high viewership or the high readership that we have in order to influence public opinion about Jewish life in general, and the state of Israel, and Israeli affairs in particular. Also, the media landscape in Hungary is pretty positive in general, because even the left-wing media outlets in general are not anti-Israel, perhaps not pro-Israel so much, but it's very rare that you find an article that is strongly biased against Israel, and we do raise red flags every single time when we see like a biased title of an article that suggests, I don't know, 10,000 Palestinians died, and somewhere in the bottom it says, as they were putting together a rocket or something. So that sort of media bias is very rare to find, and we raise a red flag and we point at every single time that we have. Just as one vignette or one general rule, as I think, again, I agree with everything that you guys said before, of the importance of the media and the importance of shaping public opinion. I think we have an easy job to do, all of us, because we just have to say the truth, and that's good enough. We don't have to make up lies. We don't have to think about ways how to spin it or how to spin the fact. We just state the facts as they are, and that's good enough, because we are on the right side of history. So that's actually very good news. On the other hand, mass media is becoming of secondary importance in a way, next to social media and all the terrible stuff that goes on X or on Facebook or Instagram and other social media outlets. So we have to fight that. We have to fight. We have to put more emphasis on filtering comments, which are in general, and that's not a public survey, it's my personal survey, is that 80% of the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-terror comments that I see on social media come from fake accounts or accounts with not real names. There's got to be a term for that. I don't know what the term is. So we gotta fight that. We gotta monitor that. We gotta put more effort. Us in general, European Jewish communities, we gotta put our heads together and find a way to monitor that and to have them removed from the social media platforms. I see that as a very important task that we all need to work on.
Thank you. Adam Levik, you are co-editor of Camera UK, which is a media watchdog, I would say.
Well, of course, we're a part of the larger Camera organization, which has been around since 1982, which means that our organization is older than some of my co-panelists. We were started in the first Lebanon War. When people always ask us, when did the media start to change? Because it wasn't always the case that the Western media was biased against Israel. We noticed that around the first Lebanon War, media began to change, and in a direction that was more propagandistic, was more advocacy-driven, less focused on the facts. And so our mission then is the same as it is today, 42 years later, and that is to promote accurate coverage of Israel in the Western media. We have a strategy which we believe is effective. As big as the problems are, we contact journalists and editors directly when we see problematic reporting. We ask them, we pressure them to hold their own publications accountable to their own editorial standards. In the UK, it's the IPSO Editors Code. In the US, it's the Society for Professional Journalists. And look, people always ask us, when we reach out to media outlets and we try to get them to correct false claims, how do they respond to us? Well, the truth is they don't like us, but I think they've learned to respect us because they know that when we contact them, we bring in sources, facts, logic. We don't engage in ad hominem attacks. We simply rely on a professional, courteous, but firm, fact-driven email or tweet, whatever the case may be, reminding them of their duty to report factually. Now, it doesn't always work, but we find that journalists and editors are kind of vain sometimes. They don't like to be publicly criticized on social media. So we feel that if we get them to correct, let's give you an example. For years, the media was trying to tell the world that the holiest site in Judaism was the Kotel, the Western Wall, when in fact what we know the holiest site is the Har Habayit, is the Temple Mount. So there wasn't one point in which the media collectively told us that, you're right, we're wrong, but we've noticed that just by plugging away each day, year after year, that they at least the Western media outlets that we monitor, stopped making that false claim. So just briefly, let me just tell you about where we operate. We operate in 4 languages. We operate in English, of course. We also operate in Spanish. We have 2 Spanish researchers that monitors the Spanish media. We have a Hebrew department, and we have an Arabic department. Now, this is one of the more important new components of CAMRA's mission, because we pay attention to the Arabic media outlets that claim to be upholding Western standards. So we don't monitor Al Jazeera, but we do monitor BBC Arabic, India Arabia, Sky Arabia, and we've noticed that a lot of the false news or fake news emanates oftentimes from the Arabic departments of these Western media outlets, where the culture, as many of you who've been paying attention to the controversy surrounding BBC Arabic, the culture is much more, anti-Israel, much more openly anti-Semitic. We found that when we get the Arabic media to pay attention to us and to pay more attention to the facts, that goes downhill towards the non-Arabic media outlets. So let me give you an example of our success. And again, I'm not saying that the problem's solved, we can all go home, but just to give you a sense of how big the problem was, and by virtue of the numbers. Beginning October 7th until today, our Arabic department prompted 100 corrections at BBC Arabic. That's 100 corrections at BBC Arabic. Now, you can look at that 2 ways, right? You can look at that and say that, wow, way to go, CAMRA, for getting those corrections. But we don't think that that's the end story. We think the story is that the BBC Arabic culture is so corrupted and so beneath the standards of even their problematic English division that there's a sense, I think, internally from what we hear, and also certainly a sense by the license fee paying British taxpayers that service, which has a huge impact around the world, is corrupted, and that there needs to be major reforms. We find that by really taking it to the media outlets and holding them accountable, and by promoting our successes and their failures in social media, that we have an impact. Having said that, look, the question that you seemed to ask before was that how have things changed since October 7th? And I would say, there's if you're to read one op-ed about the media coverage of Israel since October 7th, there's a writer named Shani Moore who wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in November, and it was something along the lines of, he said, the media responded to the worst anti-Semitic massacre since the Holocaust by hating Israel more. In other words, what he argued was that, there's this idea that he referred to as cognitive dissonance avoidance, So I think on October 7th, arguably was the most momentous event in terms of it showing that Israel was right, showing that the Palestinian terrorists that surround Israel are as malevolent as Israel said that it was. And instead of engaging in some introspection and tempering their critical coverage of Israel, they only doubled down on that hatred. Right, the volume of anti-Israel articles and op-eds in the British media, I can tell you, as co-editor of Camera UK, is unlike anything we ever experienced before. So while on one hand we're dealing with the worst media coverage of Israel as far as in a camera's memory, on the other hand, we are finding ourselves making some success, particularly in BBC Arabic. So if there's one takeaway, I would just say that we often encourage people to be their own advocate and to use the tools that we provide them at camera.org and our other camera brands to contact your own media outlet if you see something that's inaccurate, that's clearly inaccurate or propagandistic or violates their own ethics. We have a staff of about 50 worldwide, but we count on people that support our mission to engage in the same kind of advocacy that we engage in. And the stakes after October 7th, I don't need to tell you. I mean, as an Israeli, I could go into it, but I think we all know, everyone in this room knows that everything changed on October 7th and it won't be the same. But the one thing that I do feel good about each day, despite the trauma of October 7th, is that I wake up every morning and then I go to work and I fight the good fight. And so I encourage everyone to do the same.
Thank you, Adam. Blaise van der Linden, you are a journalist from Belgium, Brussels, Radio Judaica. What is being a journalist in a Jewish radio as a non-Jewish journalist?
Yeah, true. As you said, I'm not Jewish. I arrived at this radio, the only Jewish media in Belgium, in Brussels. Then, well, it's not very changing actually. It's something new for me, and I really enjoy it. I'm discovering a culture and also a part of the world that I really didn't knew, and especially since October 7th and what happened. But it's a bit complicated in Belgium because the situation in Belgium is hard. The government is literally anti-Israel.
Like it's
Belgium is closer to Spain and Ireland than the rest. And also the situation actually is that in Belgium we're voting for every step of the power in June and then in October. And what is happening now in this war between Israel and Hamas is used by a lot of politics to earn votes, and we can see that they are polarizing the society. And just another fact, when Israel bombed accidentally Rafah last week, well, in Belgium, in front of the embassy of Israel in Brussels, every night at 6 p.m., there were people who were assembling in front of the embassy, throwing rocks, and it was dangerous. It was dangerous, and that is actually the climate here in Brussels and in Belgium. I don't know if there's people who are living in Brussels actually now, and it's really hard.
Also on campuses also.
On campuses also, and I have an example. Near our radio, there's a primary school, and Friday morning when I arrived at the radio at 5 a.m., well, on the school was written, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," on the primary school with children in it. And that is the actual climate in Belgium. It's hard to another example, and then I stop because I know that we don't have a lot of time. Last week, you organized a press conference with hostage families. Well, apart from me, there were two Belgian medias that were present, which were RTL and Le Soir, and all the rest of the medias weren't there. And it's not the first time that you organize a hostage delegation, and there are only European medias.
Yeah, correct. This is unfortunately, and they always say that it's not the first time. We have already covered this, and blah blah blah. It's usual remaining. So I have a quick question, but also a quick answer, please, everyone. What is your relations with journalists from other media, like general media, in your country, in your respective countries? I have noticed that I have had like 40 years of relations with journalists in the general media. This has created an atmosphere of understanding also, and the people they ask questions, they want to learn. So I think it's important to nourish this relation. So what's happening in your respective countries? Please, Yo.
So, my name is Luca. I'm the former chief editor of Atikva, that is UJ Media Outlet, and it was born in 1944. So it's a pretty old magazine. And since the very beginning, it was run by young students. It burned like a platform for the young Jews in order to express their opinion and show to the other people what is like the point of view of the young Jews through all the content. So from the Jewish life, from culture, Jewish culture, obviously Israel, and also from the current events. So in Italy, talking about politics. And since October 7, so we kind of completely changed our contents from that stuff to debunking the fake news from the pro-Palestinians, and also doing a lot of asbara, because most of our readers and also viewers, because we are now a multi-platform media, so we work in all the websites, printed magazines, and also especially on Instagram. And so we focused all that work on Israel, like till few months ago, like the very first months of the war, we focused only on Israel and what is happening, and sometimes looking at Jewish activities, like, I don't know, fostering Jewish life inside in Italy, because the people must know that the Italian Jewry is resilient. We know that is happening, a nightmare in Israel, but we have to move on, obviously thinking about Israel always, but we need to move on because we can be blocked in ourselves, have fear of what is happening outside us. In fact, also one of the main problems at this moment, like media that is run by young students, is that the anti-Semitism inside the universities. And so from this point of view, Atikva is like a kind of megaphone of what UJ is doing through these weeks. For example, like doing flash mobs or speeches around universities, or Jewish events or not Jewish events. And now UJ and also Atikva became like a sort of opinion leader about what is happening inside in university, so the anti-Semitism on the Italian campuses. And regarding the media, so the general media, Atikva directly, they don't have like a direct link with the general media, but instead UJ needs a link to the media. And in fact, from the last few months, we need to open a sort of press office run by the veterans of the UJ in order to face the media in the best way possible, because we need to express our struggles, also our concerns of what is happening in the universities, especially, and in general in Italy, about the rising of anti-Semitism that now no one is noticing at all. So they think that there is something, but they didn't know that there is a much bigger problem.
I have a question. Is any one of you invited to political debates on television regarding Israel or Jewish issues? Can you tell me? Yes.
Yeah, I'm a regular. I go to various TV stations and radio programs and podcasts on a regular basis, and I mean almost daily. So
non-Jewish.
Non-Jewish, yes. I find this extremely important. I look at this building, and this is one of the points that perhaps are important to mark, and that is to develop a very good relationship with general media people. We have to understand that even by the mainstream media, it's those that are working there are just people, like regular people who have names, and you could meet them and call them up and develop relationships. It's really like a sales job. It's nothing more than a sales job. You gotta build those relationships so that every time they have a question, every time they come across anything that has got to do with Israel, Jews, you should be the first one that they call for an opinion. So I may be lucky, but also I worked very hard on this to develop these relationships. And again, it's a sales job. It really is. It's just like if you would be a Bible salesman or anything of that sort. Got to develop those relationships, and then you'll be the first one that they're going to call.
So as we are short of time, we are going to wrap up. If you have one more thing to say, but I would like to conclude this panel by saying that what is important today, as we discussed in previous panels, is to be strong together. At the press conference, Rabbi Menachem Margolin said that we are here to fight together, to find ourselves together, and to try to have a solution together. I think Jewish media also need to fight together. I think we need to work together to find solutions together because we have the same problems. We need to cooperate, and in this regard, I can announce a new project to launch an association of Jewish media in Europe that will cooperate, that will share content, that will discuss, organize events. I think it's very important because we have sometimes to share contents, to share articles, even though it's not the same language, but it can be translated. And I think everyone here is agreed to this kind, and each media in Europe, each Jewish media in Europe, will be, of course, invited to join this association of European Jewish media. Like there is such an association in the United States. We should do it also in Europe. So I would like to thank the panelists. I think there is one more remark from one of our panelists, please.
Yes, building up on the being together that you mentioned. First of all, yes, great initiative, but also showing up physically at certain events. For example, when we do stuff together, this shows unity in world, like in our European Jewish community. This thing is great. We're here together. There is more. We can always show up for each other there physically. It brings, more, a stronger support. When people locally, domestically, in each of our countries see that we're not, speaking only for our own Jewish community, that we're one larger European community, I think that would also be of great benefit to everybody.
Thank you so much. So I would like to thank again our panelists. I think they deserve a big applause. And So I'm concluding this this panel, and thank you very much for staying until the end of the day. Thank you.